Hi everyone, welcome to the Splanification Barn. I want to add on to a little bit of what's very important for today. As we know, prices of everything is going up. Every time you go to the grocery store, we see more and more of less and less. There are empty shelves, there are big holes, there are gaps. There is a whole lot of space behind the little bit of food they have up at the front of the shelf, and the price for it is going up and up and up. We're probably, conservatively over 50% of our grocery prices have increased in this year, and we're told, brace yourself, it's about to just take off. As things take off, there's going to be shortages that are spawned by panic buying, people grabbing all they can while they can. I want to share with you six, maybe seven ways that you can sort of beat the budget on your grocery cart. How you can have with very little change to your, actually an improvement to the quality of food that you eat, with far less cost out of your pocket. There are ways to beat the budget, and I've covered a few of these in a previous video, but let me tell you, they're worth repeating. Most of these, though, are there's some fresh stuff here. First, buy in bulk. Now, we've talked about that before, especially in the area of the spices and things that you use. Buying just a little bit for, it's only $4 or so. Well, think of what you're getting for $4. You're getting maybe a quarter ounce or less than an ounce of spice for $4. That's $64 a pound if it's $4 an ounce. That's a lot of money for that. And yet, if you would just up that a little bit and pay less than $20, you could get a pound of that spice. And think about it, most of the spices that we have, if they're properly stored and can last that long, they will certainly go through that much in a lifetime. I bought a bulk 25-pound bag of salt one time. Salt will last indefinitely, and when stored well. And good night, that was years ago. And the price was so reasonable. I don't know that I paid more than $12 for that 25-pound bag of salt. And yet, and I'm just out of my head thinking the price because it's been a long time ago. But I know the price was pretty reasonable. And we're still using that. We haven't bought any commercial grade salt, the little round cylinder things. I refill it. And I've refilled it a lot of times. I take it back. I did actually buy another one of those cheap generic brand salt, 1 pound salt cylinders. And the reason I bought it was that I needed another salt cylinder. The old one was worn out from refilling it so many times. And that's just salt. We've done this with turmeric and cinnamon and or turmeric, if you pronounce it that way, and cream of tartar. And we buy our baking soda in the great big 13-pound bags. We buy hardly anything in the small containers anymore. We buy, if it's something that we use often, we buy a large quantity and we refill the little containers. It works, believe me. You will save a ton by not spending that kind of money. Also, cook from scratch. Learn how to cook from scratch. When our pioneer ancestors went to the grocery store, their purchases of food were typically sugar, salt, flour. That was sometimes salt pork or bacon or something along that line, but that was it. They didn't have SpaghettiOs. Sometimes they had canned goods. You could buy some local food that was canned by your neighbors, and you could buy them out of there. Peaches from last fall or something of that sort. But not a lot of other stuff. They didn't have SpaghettiOs, they didn't have Hamburger Helper, they didn't have Pancake Mix, and they didn't have Bisquick. Learn to do that on your own. Pancakes are so easy. Come on. A cup of flour, 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, same baking soda, an egg, some yogurt or buttermilk or something along that line. Whip it up, and you've got the best pancakes ever. Better than anything you get in a box that says just add water. Believe me, they taste so much better. You'll never go back to those other ones. And you don't have to store another box of something on your shelf. Your shelf gets filled with all of these pre-made foods that you could do so much better and so much cheaper if you just do it yourself. Then nix the freezer. I can't tell you the number of people that I have come across that have been on a 6-month waiting list to get a freezer. Well, why do you need a new freezer? Well, the old one finally burned out. How many do you know who have had a freezer failure, or they had a power outage failure, or their greatest need for emergency power is to keep the freezer going because they have close to $1,000 worth of meat in there? And the nightmare of it's just repeated so many times. A freezer failed. Nobody knew it. Somebody goes downstairs into the basement and opens the lid of the freezer and sees some of the horsemen of the apocalypse come out because the stink is so bad. And we've got all of this rotten food in there. And you go through and you're finding, we're talking about $1,000 worth of meat easily can be in a freezer. And if you buy meat like we used to, buying it on the hoof and having it butchered, let me tell you, that's a year's supply of meat in there. And I can't afford to have that thing go bad. And I can't afford to have a power outage that causes that to fail. So how can I not be so dependent on that lifeline of electricity? Easy. Can it. Meat cans quite well. I can keep a few steaks and roasts and choice pieces in the refrigerator, but canning it, you can even can hamburger. I just did. And you can can meat. You don't have to just have tuna fish to can either. Did you realize you could can your own tuna fish? If you're in an area close to the seashore where you can buy tuna, we used to go out to the boats and buy them right off the boat. We were buying albacore tuna out of Westport, Washington, and we would bring it home and can our own tuna. Oh man, let me tell you, that fish tasted so much better than Charlie in the can. What we were getting out of the grocery store tasted like what they swept up off the floor of the cannery. It was awful. It had the consistency of sawdust and it tasted terrible. But boy, that fresh tuna that we canned ourselves was so much better. So learn to can and learn to dehydrate. Our last year's produce from our garden, almost entirely we dehydrated. And we powdered a lot of stuff that we found incredible uses for the powdered zucchini and squashes and green stuff. The green powder, you can use it in almost anything. And what I found also was that zucchini, when it's dehydrated and powdered, is actually sweet, which, as it says, you could put it in a smoothie, you can put it in cookies, brownies, bread. It really does a great job there. And you're getting lots of nutrition out of it. Drying out and preserving by dehydration is almost like freeze drying. It preserves all of the nutrition, whereas you lose some of the nutrition when you can. And the word is out. You can't really can zucchini very well. Some people have played with it and tried it, but the texture goes crazy. So you can dehydrate it that way. You could dehydrate it into chunks, throw it into a stew, and it rehydrates, and it's just like you've just cooked up some zucchini in it. So learn those two. We can pack an entire year's worth of garden produce into a fairly small space on our shelf now, where before it would fill up several shelves of lots of jars. So save the jars for the meat things that you can can that way, and dehydrate as much as you can. And that will save you on freezers, save you on being vulnerable to losing huge amounts of food in your freezer. Also, plant a garden. You know, you can start small. You can do it in a 5-gallon bucket on your porch. You can grow something, and I know there are community gardens you can get into in neighborhoods where they don't have where people don't have enough land. But I know people in apartments. They've got a small porch or a small balcony that they're on an upper floor and they've got a balcony. Well, they can grow 5-gallon buckets full of potting soil and grow tomatoes and peppers, and they can grow a lot that way. There's a ton you can do that way. So learn to start your food from seeds. Learn to start your own plants. There are people who have made quite a business of making seed starts, taking seed, growing them into small plants, and then selling them when they're like 4 to 6 inches tall, and go to a farmer's market and offer these things for sale. Oh my goodness, you can finance a whole lot of your food bill by marketing that kind of business right there. Maybe you don't have room to have a garden. Maybe you can't grow a whole lot of food, but you can start plants. That doesn't take a lot, and you can start a cottage industry right there. That's they call it having a side hustle. You got your regular job, and then you got these several other things that you do that bring in money and help you out. Also, maximize your seasons. We not only need to learn to eat seasonally, but we also need to maximize our season. Just because you grew a tomato there, or let's say a lettuce or some other kind of plant, and you've harvested that's an empty space. Put something else in it. Find something that will grow to maturity, to harvest in the time you have left in your growing season. Don't let ground sit there vacant. Keep it busy, and plant rotating crops of different varieties and different plants, and just keep it going. You can plant probably 2 or 3, maybe sometimes 4 crops in a growing season. If you're in a lengthy growing season like we have here in Texas, we have at least a spring growing season that's rather long, and then a fall growing season that's also rather long. And there are cold weather crops that we can grow clean through our winter. So give it a try. Keep maximizing your ground's potential. The fifth idea is to fish, hunt, and forage. There's a lot of wild food that grows around you that is amply available. Learn how to forage. Learn how to identify plants, edible plants, and medicinal plants that are out there that grow in your area. Take a walk in the woods. Bring a bag with you. You may come back with a lot of pretty good stuff. And if you're in an area where you can hunt, that's a viable way to bring home free meat. It's not free. You got to have a license, and there's a lot of expenses into hunting. So be careful that you're not in an area where hunting is all made into sport only for rich men who can afford it, rather than actually a hunting area where you can bring home game. Now, fishing. Oh, there is a good place. Fish can be canned. You don't have to freeze it. And you can, I have cooked catfish, and so help me, the next day it was cold in the refrigerator, and I tried a piece and it tasted just like chicken. In fact, it tasted better than chicken. It was so good. And we're talking cold fried fish. Yes. Catfish is an amazing fish, and it tastes, it is a fish that you can can. It cans very well. It is not a fishy tasting fish, if you know what I mean. And it's a very good type of fish that you can put away. You can can a lot of fish. You can can salmon. You can can tuna. You can can um, a host of fish. I don't know that there's a fish that you can't preserve by canning, and that's a good idea. So fishing, hunting, foraging, it's a way to boost your groceries and give you some variety. The last is probably something you need to start working on and get busy on, because it is a vital aspect of making it through the hard times ahead, and that is networking. Network, get people together, network to buy meat. We're in a group of people who are working on this right now. We have found that the cost of beef on the hoof has not gone up like the cost of meat freezer wrapped or shrink wrapped in the grocery store shelf. So there is something going on there that's making the prices go up, but the ranchers and the farmers aren't doing it. It's not them. Their feed costs are going up. They're going to have to downsize their herds to accommodate it. They're also the cost of operating their machinery is going up like crazy. Even the cost of lubricants and oils, I'm told, has gone up 25% here recently, and that greatly affects the cost of oil changes, hydraulic fluid changes, greasing their equipment, keeping their equipment operating. Their operating expenses are going up, and they're going to have, and at the same time, they're going to have to downsize their herds to accommodate it, because the price for the beef hasn't gone up with it. So they're either going to have to charge more and or downsize. And they've found the way the government works, they're going to downsize. That will bring up the price. And so they will sell off that meat. You can buy those cattle on the hoof. You're talking a live mooing cow. You say, well, what am I going to do with that? You network. You may not be able to accommodate a whole cow, but if you had 4 people together, then you're only talking about a quarter of a beef. And you can handle that pretty well. You can can a quarter of a beef, and you're not going to do it in 1 dozen jars, but you sure can do it within reason in your at your house. And in our case, we have a group of people. One has connections to ranches. Another one, this person's father is a retired butcher and can handle that. Another one has a ranch that has a walk-in box and facilities that we could process the beef. And all of this is networking together, and we're bringing the things together to make it work, so that we will be able to purchase some beef and store it, put it away for the hard times. And it's working, folks. This is networking to get beef, networking to get pork, networking to get chicken. The pork, we're pretty well satisfied with that here in Texas. We've got some ranchers that have land, and they have feral hogs. And these feral hogs, something's got to be done with them. Well, the big ones, there's not much you can do with that except let the coyotes eat them. But they have tons of babies, which is the problem. That's why they reproduce so often. And what you end up doing is when the babies get up to about 70 to 80 pounds, then you trap them. And you feed them continually, and they know when the feeders go off, and they'll be there to eat, and they will come, and they're easily suckered that way. But then one day, at about 75 to 80 pounds, that's when the gate closes, and you have now entrapped probably 20 hogs, and they're about 80 pounds apiece. You feed them hog feed and corn for about 6 to 8 weeks. It fattens them up, puts them over 100 pounds, and all of the gamey wild taste goes away. And so now they are prime for butchering and putting away. for those hard times. You can can pork. I just did. Just this week, I put up. It was just a pork shoulder roast, but at $2 a pound, it was a steal. Used to be 98 cents a pound 6 months ago, but we canned it up, cooked it down, canned it up, and I've got 8-pint jars of pulled pork. Perfect. It'll store away for that. We can keep it that way for a long time. And in that, each one of those is a sufficient amount of lard that will preserve also. That's another thing that'll be hard to have in future days. Folks, we got to think out of the box. You've got to figure a way to get connected and get your supplies without your resources, your food, and sidestep the grocery store. We need to stop dumping all our money there and figure out ways that we can make our money work better for us. I hope this helps. Things aren't going well, we know. So we put our heads together, we can figure it out. And God bless you all. Let's make this work. You have a great day.